Picture this, a quiet road, frozen mud, pine trees pressing in from both sides like walls. A black German staff car rolls through the Soviet countryside, its headlights cutting through the March fog. Inside, a 41-year-old man in a crisp SS uniform is reviewing paperwork. He has done this 1,000 times, traveling between command posts, signing orders, managing logistics. He is not thinking about danger. Men like him never do. Then the forest explodes. Gunfire tears through the vehicle. Glass shatters. The driver slumps. And a single bullet finds the man in the back seat, tearing through his leg, severing the femoral artery. In that instant, one of the most prolific mass murderers in the history of the Nazi regime is finished. Not by a war crimes tribunal, not by Allied bombs, by Soviet partisans on a frozen road, fighting back against a man who thought ordinary people were beneath his concern. His name was Franz Walter Stahlecker. He was a pastor's son, a law professor's student, a husband, a father of 4, and the man personally responsible for documenting, though in his own handwriting, the murder of 249,420 human beings in under 9 months. This is his story, and it is one of the most chilling in all of World War II. Welcome to WW2 Time Tales. If you are new here, this channel exists to make sure history like this is never erased. Hit subscribe right now, turn on notifications, and join thousands of history lovers who refuse to look away. October 10th, 1900, a small village called Sternenfels in the German Empire. A Protestant pastor named Paul Eugen Stahlecker and his wife Anna welcomed their second child into the world. They name him Franz Walter. It is one of history's cruelest ironies that one of the most organized killers the 20th century would ever produce came from a household built on the Bible, on scholarship, and on the quiet dignity of small-town German life. When Franz was 6, the family moved to Tübingen, a jewel of a university city on the banks of the Neckar River, famous for its half-timbered buildings, its centuries-old university, and its tradition of producing serious, brilliant men, philosophers, theologians, poets. The young Hegel once studied there. So did Schelling. So did Hölderlin. Franz Walter Stahlecker walked those same streets. He was a serious, ambitious student. Not the kind to cause scenes, but the kind teachers remembered. Methodical, precise, hungry. In 1918, at 18, he was drafted into the dying German army in the final weeks of World War I. He barely fired a shot. But what he witnessed, Germany's total military collapse, the Kaiser abdicating, revolution spreading through Berlin like wildfire, left a mark that would never fully heal. He came home to a country that felt humiliated, lost, and furious. And like thousands of young German men of his generation, he went looking for something to believe in. Stahlecker enrolled at the University of Tübingen to study law. On paper, everything looked respectable. In reality, he was being pulled into circles that were anything but. Germany in the early 1920s was a powder keg. Street battles between communists and nationalist paramilitaries killed people in broad daylight. A hyperinflation made the German mark worthless overnight. People brought wheelbarrows of cash to the bakery and still couldn't afford a loaf of bread. The national humiliation of the Versailles Treaty, which stripped Germany of territory, forced it to accept full war guilt, and demanded crippling reparations, had poisoned the mood of an entire generation. Stahlecker joined a dueling fraternity, the kind that glorified military discipline, celebrated German blood, and despised the new democratic government in Berlin. He drifted deeper. He joined the Deutsch-Völkischer Schutz- und Trutzbund, one of the most openly anti-Semitic organizations in Weimar Germany, founded explicitly on racial hatred. He also connected with the secret organization Consul, a paramilitary network responsible for the political assassinations of prominent German Democrats, including the murder of Foreign Minister Walter Rathenau in 1922. This was not a student flirtation with radical ideas. This was a commitment. In 1927, he earned his doctorate in law. Dr. Franz Walter Stahlecker, educated, credentialed, and already quietly radicalized to the core. Here is where history adds one of its most uncomfortable layers. In 1932, the year before Hitler took power, Stahlecker married Louise Gabriele von Gottlingen. She came from an old noble Swabian family. By every account, she was devoted to him. Together, they would have 4 children. Colleagues who interacted with Stahlecker in the early 1930s described a man who was warm at home, formal at work. He brought flowers to his wife. He took his children to church. Neighbors in Tübingen remembered him as polite, well-dressed, a model of German propriety. He read to his children in the evenings. He was, by all surface appearances, a loving father. This detail is not here to humanize a murderer. It is here because it is the truth, and the truth is more disturbing than any monster you could invent. The man who would later sign death warrants for 250,000 people tucked his children into bed the night before. History's worst atrocities were not committed by obvious demons. They were committed by men who seemed perfectly normal. When Hitler came to power in January 1933, Stahlecker joined the Nazi Party immediately. He was so eager to demonstrate early loyalty that his membership number was secretly backdated. His real number was 3,219,015, but it was altered to 1,069,130, making him appear a far earlier supporter than he actually was. Even in joining a party built on lies, he lied about when he joined. The Nazi machine rewarded efficiency above everything. By May 1933, just months after Hitler's rise, Stahlecker was already deputy head of the Württemberg political police. Within a year, he ran the whole office. His task was the systematic destruction of political opposition, arresting communists, silencing journalists, intimidating judges, disappearing dissidents. He did it all with the quiet precision of a man managing a filing system. His work attracted the attention of Reinhard Heydrich, arguably the most dangerous man in the entire SS apparatus. Heydrich was building a bureaucratic empire of terror, and he needed lieutenants who combined intelligence with absolute obedience. Stahlecker fit perfectly. His reports were always immaculate, written in careful legal language that buried human suffering beneath administrative terminology. In 1938, following Germany's annexation of Austria, Stahlecker was sent to Vienna as inspector of the security police in SD. There he worked directly alongside Adolf Eichmann. Together they organized the forced expulsion of Austria's Jewish population, creating an assembly line system for stripping people of their property, their citizenship, and their dignity before forcing them out of the country. What the paperwork called emigration processing was, in reality, organized theft and displacement on a massive scale. In 1939, he was appointed commander of the security police in the Nazi protectorate of Bohemia and Moravia. Based in Prague, a city of extraordinary beauty that now lived under the boot of occupation. In 1940, he moved to Norway. By early 1941, he was back in Berlin, waiting for the assignment that would define his legacy forever. Spring 1941. Hitler is finalizing Operation Barbarossa, the invasion of the Soviet Union. But this is not a conventional military campaign. Hitler's explicit orders make clear this is a war of racial and ideological extermination. Soviet commissars are to be shot on sight. Jews are to be eliminated across all occupied territory. To carry out this mission behind the advancing German army, my 4 mobile killing units, the Einsatzgruppen, are assembled. Stahlecker is chosen to command Einsatzgruppe A. He is promoted to SS Brigadeführer, the equivalent of a brigadier general in the U.S. Army, and simultaneously elevated to General Major der Polizei. Under his direct command, roughly 1,000 trained SS and police personnel, reinforced by local auxiliary units and collaborationist militias eager to participate in the killing. On June 22, 1941, the moment Barbarossa begins, Einsatzgruppe A rolls into the Baltic states directly behind Army Group North. Within the first 48 hours, the executions begin. In Lithuania, men are rounded up at dawn and marched to forests outside Kaunas. In Latvia, entire Jewish neighborhoods are surrounded. Residents pulled into the streets at gunpoint. In Estonia, families are separated, men taken in one direction, women and children in another, and none of them are coming back. The victims are forced to dig their own mass graves before being shot. The pits are then covered over with dirt, becoming unmarked fields that local people would walk past for decades. Stahlecker did not just observe this, he managed it. He submitted regular detailed reports to Reinhard Heydrich in Berlin, tracking the numbers with the precision of a corporate analyst filing quarterly earnings. In early July 1941, after the fall of Riga, he personally ordered the destruction of the city's synagogues. All but one were burned to the ground. The Petov synagogue was spared only because the fire risk to neighboring non-Jewish property was deemed too high. Not mercy, mathematics. Stahlecker also personally created the Kommando, a Latvian auxiliary unit that became one of the most brutal murder squads in the entire Holocaust. His deliberate strategy was to involve local populations in the killing, allowing Berlin to later point to the massacres as spontaneous acts of local revenge rather than organized Nazi policy. It was a masterclass in deception of history itself. By October 1941, his first comprehensive report to Berlin documented the murder of over 118,000 people in fewer than 4 months. By January 31, 1942, in what became known as the Stahlecker Report, one of the most damning documents ever recovered from the Nazi archives, he reported a total of 249,420 Jews killed under his direct operational authority. 249,420 people, when each one had a name, a family, a home, a story, and Stahlecker reduced them to a number in a column on a typed page. He also established the Jungfernhof concentration camp near Riga, a facility that received deportation trains carrying Jews from Germany, Austria, and Czechoslovakia. Thousands who arrived there in the winter of 1941 to 42 were dead within days, shot in mass executions in the Bikerniki forest just outside the city. Under his authority, the Jewish communities of Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, communities whose roots in the region stretch back over 600 years, were almost entirely destroyed within a single year. By early 1942, the world was shifting. Germany's offensive against Moscow had collapsed in the brutal Soviet winter. The United States had entered the war after Pearl Harbor, and behind German lines across the Soviet Union, partisan resistance was growing bolder, targeting supply lines, command posts, and senior German personnel with increasing precision and ferocity. Stahlecker's operational headquarters was located near Krasnogvardsk, today known as Gachina, south of Leningrad. He traveled regularly between field positions, always moving, always reviewing reports, always managing the machinery of death. On March 22, 1942, his staff car was ambushed by Soviet partisans on a road in the Krasnogvardsk district. A bullet struck him in the leg, tearing through the femoral artery. He was rushed first to Riga for emergency treatment, then loaded onto a plane bound for Prague, where Luisa Gabriele and their 4 children were living. He never arrived. Franz Walter Stahlecker, the pastor's son, the law student, the loving father, the meticulous bureaucrat of mass murder, died aboard that aircraft on March 23, 1942, from catastrophic blood loss. He was 41 years old. The Nazi propaganda machine moved quickly. A state funeral was held in Prague. Reinhard Heydrich, himself less than 2 months from his own assassination, delivered the eulogy, praising Stahlecker's unwavering devotion to the Führer and the German people. Wreaths arrived from Heinrich Himmler and Foreign Minister Joachim von Ribbentrop. German newspapers published glowing tributes to a brave officer who had sacrificed himself in the line of duty. To his children, growing up in wartime Prague, their father was a hero who died serving his country. History disagrees. When Allied investigators recovered the Stahlecker report at the end of the war, the Nuremberg prosecutors were confronted with something unprecedented. A senior Nazi official who had personally documented his own crimes in meticulous bureaucratic detail. Not out of confession, out of pride, out of professional habit. The report became central evidence in the Nuremberg Einsatzgruppe trial of 1947 to 48, helping to convict multiple commanders of crimes against humanity. Stahlecker himself faced no court. He received no sentence. He answered to no survivor. His judgment came on a frozen Soviet road from men and women who had nothing left to lose and everything to avenge. The story of Franz Walter Stahlecker is not just a chapter in a history book. It is a warning about what institutions, education, and bureaucracy can become when human conscience is surrendered to ideology. He was not uneducated. He was not poor. He was not desperate. He chose this. That is the most disturbing fact of all. If this story hit you the way it hits us every time we research it, share this video. Drop a comment below. Tell us, which Nazi commander should we cover next? Every share, every comment, every subscription keeps this channel alive and keeps these 249,420 names from being forgotten. This is World War II Time Tales. History isn't just the past, it's a mirror. We'll see you in the next one.